I'm Rebecca, and I'm a medium writer and a storyteller, and I also do some mentoring. And this presentation is about how to successfully move to another country and why. I wrote a handful of Medium articles on this, and I'll share those links with you as well. This is me in one of the last days that I was in the United States. The day after my 44th birthday, I called my boss and quit my corporate job. My husband and I sold, I would say about 75%. We sold a lot of our personal belongings, and we moved to the country of Panama. I describe myself as a passionate seeker of authenticity. I write a lot of stories about self-awareness. I really write a lot about choice and mental health and the journey of healing. And I write on Medium, the platform Medium. And I actually have a book that will come out this spring based on this talk that I'm really excited about. And then I have super big plans in 2021 as well to launch both a podcast as well as a membership community. This is one of my favorite quotes from author Seth Godin. Journeys that matter most rarely come with a map. And I often have to remind myself of this quote as well. I'm going to read a little, for just a few minutes, I'm going to read the first section to one of the stories that I wrote for you. And this will give you kind of the backstory of what the presentation will be about. I had lots of time to think during my 60-mile daily commute. I listened to audiobooks, podcasts, and sometimes music. Occasionally, I called my sisters or close friends. Mostly, I drove in silence, pondering my life. I had long internal conversations that conjured various questions about my purpose. The heaviest question, the one that took my breath, was, if money, time, and resources didn't matter, what would I do? How could I utilize my time, talents, and energy to enjoy my life and make a difference in the world? Surely there must be other options. I left a lucrative corporate career to work for a small sporting goods company with a Camelot culture. It was a unique haven of passion and authenticity filled with bright, generous people. It was my tribe, and I loved helping athletes of all ages improve their skills. Unfortunately, a year in, the company was bought by a conglomerate focused on profits, not our people or the athletes we served. I stayed 8 months praying the transition would smooth out and we could get our positive juju back, but it never came. When my commute became filled with dread in the morning and tears in the afternoon, I knew it was time to leave. The question transformed into, what's next? Candidly, I was proud of myself for pausing to even ask. As a child of a 35-year factory auto worker, I have a penchant for certainty and a steady paycheck. My mind screamed, get another job. Stay in the safety and security of the 9-to-5, even if it's a complete sham. Yet, in the quiet of my commute, I could feel the nudge towards something different. What that was, I never imagined. That's just a little bit of backstory on, I'm going to share with you some more logistics and give you the how-tos if you are considering moving to another country. I would love to be a resource for you. So I have, these are the 5 critical decisions, aspects, and logistical tips to help you move abroad. And so I'm an American, and we moved to Panama about a year and a half ago. And certainly, regardless of where you're moving, there are going to be specific nuances that are related to that culture and that area that would encourage you to dig into. But these are just kind of 5 broad brush tips that I think will help you in your decision and to give you the courage to leap. So one, the biggest question, what do you want? You know, the world is full of infinite possibilities, and getting clear on your goals will narrow the search and save your sanity for sure. A handful of essential questions to ask are, what's your budget? So for us, I wanted to live on about $2,000 a month, and I wanted to live like pretty decently. Not super extravagant, but I wanted to live comfortably on $2,000 a month. So that really shaped a lot of our decision as we looked at places. What type of climate do you prefer? Do you want to live somewhere warm? Do you want to live somewhere that has multiple seasons? Are you a ski buff and you want to intentionally live where there's lots of snow? What outdoor activities do you enjoy? I'm a mountain climber and a hiker, and I wanted to live in a place that had easy access to climbing and just being outdoors. That was really important to both my husband and I. Do you speak another language, or are you willing to learn? My Spanish is still pequeño. However, I'm learning, and my husband's is much better, and I'm so grateful for that. But I also live in a community where I can get away with a lot of English, or I can get away with using Google Translate. Do you want to live in a city, or do you prefer a rural location? And our time difference is a factor for remote work or staying in touch with family and friends or traveling back home. If you're going to work remotely and a lot of your clients are in Europe, or if a lot of your clients are in the United States, for you to be in similar time zones or be willing to like flip-flop your schedule for them is really important for you to consider. For us, I wanted to be in similar time zones as the United States. So right now we are on Eastern time, and California, where most of our friends and family are, is 3-hour difference, but that isn't too bad as opposed to like being in Europe, where we would be more like 9-10 hours difference. And what are your must-haves and deal breakers? So this is really just an important framework for you to consider as you look at deciding to move abroad. Next tip is do your research. Y'all, I literally Googled, where can you live in the world on $25,000 a year? And it's fascinating. There's a lot of places, a really lot of places, and it can get overwhelming really quickly. And so this is where your list becomes important. Those weren't meant to be, rigid, I have to have these things, but really to give you guidelines, to be a framework for your dreams. There are many places that look super attractive, especially in the beginning. And without your guidelines, goodness, it's easy to get stuck in a rabbit hole and just spend weeks and months fishing around the internet. And so if you use your dream bucket, your guidelines of what you want, your must-haves and your deal breakers, it will weed away some of those periphery places that won't just be a time suck for you. I just believe wholeheartedly in the power of stories. And so I wanted to hear from various sources. Now, certainly credible sources like International Living, government agencies, and travel sites, those were really important for us to consider. But I also wanted to hear people's stories that lived there. I read other expat blogs. There are tons of Facebook groups. I know just for where we live in Boquete, there's a handful of Facebook groups for people that live here, expats that live here, and then other expats that are interested in moving here. There's YouTube channels, and there's even people that make a living giving tours of places all over the world. And so a lot of times if you can find their websites, there's free resources on there. And then there's also certainly some paid resources. But for me to feel confident, I need to hear from a variety of different locations from different sources for me to feel good about jumping ship. Just the more information and personal stories you'll collect, I think it'll give you that confidence to pull the trigger. The next tip is to visit. Goodness, this is such a huge life choice, and I would really encourage you to visit if you can. My husband was a teacher, and so we used his spring break as a time to visit. We used airline miles, and we came on his spring break, and it was just such a good decision for us to actually be here and spend time. I trusted most of the information that we saw online. However, I knew that there's personal biases, there's an underlying agenda of some sites. And so I really felt like this is a huge decision. I need to see this with my own eyes. And most importantly, for me, it was important to see people's faces, to see their body language and to see their eyes of what did they like about it here? Did they enjoy their time? How are they spending their time? What were their challenges? What was the hardest things to adjust to? I wanted to find that joy. I wanted to see that they were enjoying being wherever that is. And so for us, it was really important to visit to get that personal one-on-one interaction. And so what we did was I looked for an Airbnb that the owners were on site. And so we rented a casita from a European couple, and they lived right there on the property. And before we even visited, we scheduled time with them one evening to just chat. And so it was absolutely priceless to hear directly from them of, how was the immigration process and what attorney did they use? And they had a dog. And so how was the pet immigration process? And what did they bring with them? And what did they wish they would have brought? And what did they wish that they would have left behind? It was really good to hear from them and just chat and see their vibrancy. The lady, her name is Sarah, she just gushed about how many friends she had made and how many activities she was involved with, and that there was lots of charitable things to do, and that she'd made some good friendships here. And the gentleman, Peter, had shared about hiking and about all the fun foods. And, they certainly shared some challenges, but it was good information for us to go, oh, okay, well, we need to prepare for that or just be ready for it. I can't tell you how priceless that information was. And it all came because we just spent a few hours with them one evening. Creating a plan. And so y'all, moving internationally is a daunting task. There's so many things to be done. And so if you can create a plan that will go through your really big weighty decisions that need multiple steps to complete, regardless if you have 3 months or 3 years, what are those little consistent actions that will get you closer to your goal? So is it hey, I got to sell a bunch of stuff, or I need to sell my house, or I'm going to quit my job and I want to make a bunch of doctor's appointments before I do that, or, whatever that is for you to think about, do I have a home to sell or rent? For my husband and I, we were renting. And so we coincided our departure date for when our lease was up, but we have plans to go back to the United States in a few more years. And I wanted to pay real estate prices 2 years ago as opposed to 3 years from now. And so we actually bought a house before we left, which only added to the stress and strife. But we bought a house and we rented it intentionally because that's what fit our plan. And so if that doesn't fit your plan, if you're renting or if you don't have a house, then, no worries. But what are those big weighty decisions of do you have cars to sell? Do you have a house full of stuff that you're gonna, sell on eBay or offer up? Or are you gonna do a series of garage sales? Are you gonna give stuff away? Are you gonna donate it to a charity? Or are you going to pay to store it and just put it all in storage? All of those are big decisions to consider. I mentioned this a few times. If you're going to leave your job or if your healthcare is going to shift, what doctor's appointments do you want to take care of before that coverage changes? Get your financial, government, and legal affairs in order. And so my husband and I had actually just gotten married 6 months before we moved to Panama, and I hadn't legally changed my name. And so I needed to get a new Social Security card and a new driver's license and passport before I started that immigration process with the Panamanian government. And then I really think the most important question, this is a huge question that I get across the board as I share with people and as people read my stories is, what about earning money in my new location? And so that is something that's really important to plan for is how are you going to earn money? Are you going to draw from savings? Are you going to draw from a retirement? Do you have, stock accounts that you are going to live off from? Are you going to start a new business? Are you going to coach? Are you going to start an online business? Are you going to create wares that you're going to be shipping? These are all important questions to consider. My husband and I moved to Panama because we wanted to get off the corporate hamster wheel and start new passion projects and be entrepreneurs. And we couldn't afford to live in Southern California and not work. But we could afford to live somewhere inexpensively like Panama off our savings for a few years until our new businesses could grow. And so we planned for that. Do you have pets that require vaccinations and documentation? We moved to Panama with 3 kitties Yes, 3. One of them, I'm surprised she's still alive. But yes, they all required rabies shots. There was documentation from the vet that was required. We actually hired someone to help us with the pet immigration once we landed in Panama City. But it wasn't super challenging. So I would encourage you, if you have furry pets, furry children, you absolutely can bring them. It's a bit of work, but for me, it was totally worth it. I wasn't about to leave them behind. Even the sick one, she came too. It's just so easy to get caught up in the small details that feel overwhelming. And I promise you, it does get overwhelming, especially towards the end. And so I just really feel like if you develop a thorough, detailed plan and you focus on those really big buckets, if you don't get to some of those small details, like, it's okay. They'll work themselves out, or you can have friends or family help you down the line. But if you can prioritize those critical aspects, then you'll get a majority of it taken care of. And then finally, ask for help. It's a huge life choice to move internationally, and there are literally hundreds of decisions and tasks to take care of, and it'll just save you time and money and overall your sanity if you are able to ask for help. We got recommendations on all of the vendors that we used here. Our attorney was very helpful of just her knowledge and also her contacts as well. We also hired, there was a couple of like jack of all trades guys that helped us, just so priceless. We only spent like $800 with a gentleman that helped us with our pet immigration. He also drove us 6 hours across the country after we arrived. He stored our 13 50-pound bags when we arrived. He picked up our Airbnb keys. He couriered some documents for us. Like, there was a bunch of just little things that when we arrived, it just felt like somebody's got us. Like, that we're not just arriving in the city by ourselves, that someone's got our backs. And he had this really calm, lovely demeanor too, which was super helpful when we arrived after a crazy day of travel. And then another gentleman helped us when we bought a car. He helped us transfer the plates and the title. And it was just a bunch of paperwork that we didn't know how to do. We didn't know the process, and paying him a few $100s was totally worth the hassle. And so that's just it. There's just a ton of local service providers that are inexpensive, that will just save you a lot of time and energy. And really, I encourage you to ask for help in all stages of your journey. Before we moved, our friends came and helped us with our garage sales. They took stuff to Goodwill for us. They brought us food and just emotional support. I remember my best friends, like literally the day before I was leaving, I had to withdraw a bunch of cash to bring with us, like more cash than I was comfortable saying out loud. And I was so exhausted. I was filthy. We'd moved, we moved our stuff that we're storing in the States into the garage of our house. We'd moved out of our apartment into the garage, and we had all of our stuff. We'd rented a car, and we have our 13 kitties. Like, we're driving up to LAX, and like the last thing I need to do is to go to the bank and get this money. And I'm so tired. And my best friend called me and was just like, hey, like, you got this, don't worry. And I'll never forget that, like, her just giving me that little pep talk in the 11th hour was super helpful. And even just random strangers were super helpful as well. The guy at the rental car place gave us a free upgrade. Goodness, when we were at the airport standing in line to board the plane, a lady gave us her personal cell phone number and was like, I live in Boquete right now. When you get there, if you need anything, please call. And like, we were a total stranger to her. But she was just really kind and shared. And so asking for help, I would encourage you to do. So I will give you a couple of links in the chat here. This is, I don't know how good, those are a little jumbled. These are links to the stories that I wrote that I just reviewed. And so I wrote a story called I Quit My Job and Moved to Panama. That was published on Medium in like July. And then I wrote more of what I spoke on today that was published in Better Humans, which is part of the event today. And then here is the link to my landing page also, if you'd like to stay in touch. So I went kind of quick. I said a lot in a short amount of time. And so this is my Medium profile. I publish in there, I write and publish on Medium. And then this is my email address also. I'm on all the social medias, and really, I just fully believe that if I can do this, like really anyone can. And so I'd love to be a resource for you if you need help. So I will go back through the chat and see what questions I can answer for you. So feel free to post any of your questions in the chat. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I hear great things about Mexico, Derek, as well. Yeah, 3 it was. We actually one of my best friends actually came to Panama with us because the human to animal ratio needed to match, and so we had to have another person to come with us. Brandy has a question. How can you live overseas for 6 months if you don't have residency or dual citizenship? Brandy, really the answer is I don't know. And so I think your best bet is to look up specific information for the country that you're interested in. So the broad brush opinion I will share with you is that there are many countries that you can live in for at least 3 months, some up to 6 months, without any sort of residency or going through an immigration process. Now, certainly I would imagine COVID has impacted that. In Panama, for instance, our borders were closed. They just actually opened up in the last month. And so you couldn't come if you didn't have residency already. But there are many places that you can live for at least 3 months and sometimes up to 6 months if you don't have like official residency there. But I would encourage you to look up the specifics of each of the countries that you're interested in. And I would imagine that's a pretty easy Google search, especially if you look on like their embassy websites. Yeah, Lenora is talking about permanent residency. You know, it really just depends on the country. For us, we have a friendly nations visa in the country of Panama. We had to do a full FBI background check. We had to submit like 2 years of tax records, a couple, like 6 months of bank statements. We had to go through the process with an attorney. And so overall, it cost us around $4,000 to get our permanent visas as well as our driver's licenses. There's another identification card here because many Panamanians don't have driver's licenses. There's another identification card that my husband and I actually don't have. But it's not 100% necessary, but each of those residency and immigration requirements is going to vary by country. So for us, the biggest stipulation, we had to put $5,000 into a Panamanian bank account. We had to bring that with us in cash. And so, but we opened a bank account here, and then we had to cut the checks to pay the immigration from that bank account. So immigration had to know, like, I have an official bank account here. Like, we didn't have an address or anything yet because we actually did our residency work in Panama City the week before we even came to Boquete. So each place is certainly going to vary, but it really wasn't that challenging. It was more just like daunting, like, oh my God, more paperwork and more paperwork and more paperwork. But that was what our attorney was for. And it definitely took us the better part of a year to get everything put together. But it was worth it, and we're legal now, and we can stay as long as we want. When we leave, when we go back to the States, we do have to come back once every 2 years to at least go through immigration to get a stamp. Like, we could do a layover in Panama City if we were going somewhere else. But in order to keep your residency, we have to at least visit every 2 years. Is it easier to move to European countries from the States? Again, I don't know the difference. I don't know the immigration process for other countries, but I do know that if you look on International Living or if you Google other places to move to abroad, there are lots of countries that talk about a relatively easy immigration process. You know, countries like Spain and Portugal and Thailand and Malaysia. I really don't, I didn't look at other European countries outside of Spain and Portugal initially. So I would encourage you just to do some Googling on that. But yeah, I definitely hear about border hopping too. And people in Panama used to do that also. Like you would just have to go over into Costa Rica, which is only like an hour away from here for a couple, like 3 days. And then you could like reissue your tourist visa. Yeah, we're almost out of time. Are there any more questions? I'll give you just a second. I'm gonna give you these links again. This is my Medium profile. This is where I post all of my writing. And then this is a link to article that I shared on today. And then this is how you can stay in touch with me. No spam. I post my writing in there. I share about once a week. Yeah, and I'm on all the social medias. I'm happy to answer questions if those pop up in the future. There's a couple of folks that are moving here to Panama really quickly, really soon in the next few weeks. And so I've been in touch with them just to answer various questions. But I hope you enjoyed the talk, and good for you for joining us in the new year and for bettering yourself. And I think the last thing I'll leave you with is just that you can totally do it. It's scary. It's super terrifying. I worked for a big corporation for a long time. I loved my paycheck. I loved my stock options. I loved my 401k and just having that security. I recognized that my best life was outside of the priorities of someone else, that nobody was going to appreciate my time and my talents and my energy more than me. And that it was time for me to take the leap. And so it is scary, but it's totally worth it. And the thing that helped me was just knowing that I could always go back. If it didn't work out, like I can always go back. And so, but if I never tried, then I just would never know. I would always be wondering. So thank you so much for your time today. If you have any last minute questions, I can try and answer them. If not, you can look me up on social media or subscribe and stay in touch with me that way. I'm happy to support you in your journey. So thanks, gang. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you are able to participate in some other seminars as well. Bye.